Hey everyone, and welcome to this edition of Just Parlays. I'm Jim Williams along with Chris King. It's going to be a lot of fun today, Chris, because we have a guest who's going to be joining us very soon, Jack Keely. Now, Jack is a man of many talents. Jack has been involved with NASCAR. He's been involved with the National Football League. He's been involved in college football. And just to name a few, we're going to bring him in here in a minute. And Jack is the president of Trifecta Public Relations. And he has extreme knowledge of how the CFP works behind the scenes, because putting on an event like this is pretty amazing. So, Jack, I'll bring you in, buddy. And welcome to Just Parlays. Like everybody.
Well, thanks for having me.
Jack, why don't you give us a little background on what happens to put together an event like the CFP Championship game?
Probably the easiest way to describe it is it's like a wedding. From the standpoint is you only get to do it once per se, per market, and you have all these little events that lead up to the actual ceremony. So like in a wedding, you have the in-laws that come in, you have to entertain them, take care of their hotels, take care of some meals, have a few pre-events, and then you have the actual wedding that takes place. And it's got all these different elements and timelines. And
welcome to Dialpad Meetings.
And you want to make it as perfect as possible. It just takes a ton of planning, a ton of organizing. And I guess probably the best thing is a lot of experience on what to go through, because every time you do it, there are different nuances that make it different, whether it's in Indianapolis, Miami, New Orleans, or San Francisco.
Chris, you have any questions for Jack?
Well, Jack, I mean, the big thing that Jim and I were talking about when we saw the Bulls come out, and we know with the fiasco that you had to deal with the Gasparilla Bowl, with teams not wanting to be there. But we were trying to figure out what happened that got Houston sent to the Birmingham Bowl to face Auburn basically in their backyard instead of going somewhere else.
It used to be easy to identify where teams were going. That changed, I would say, probably about 15 years ago, maybe 15 to 20 years ago, before the conferences had a lot of power. So back in the 80s and 90s, usually had one conference tied in to a bowl game, and then they would go at large for the second opponent. Now that you've got all the conferences involved, they're trying to take care of each of their teams. And there's a lot of different elements that take place that are new also in the past couple of years. There used to be ticket sales requirements. So each school is responsible for selling. For example, back in the day when I was at the Citrus Bowl, we had Tennessee playing Ohio State, great year. Peyton Manning against Eddie George and Ohio State. Each team was responsible for 12,000 ticket sales. These days, it's changed. There's no minimum, because the schools were kind of getting upset that they were getting sent different places, kind of like the example you said, that they may not want to go to. Believe it or not, as much as Hawaii may be a destination that you and I might want a vacation at in December, a lot of the schools take on a tremendous amount of expense to not only pay for the teams, but you've got all this equipment that's got to get sent over, extra staff that needs to go there. And for a few days, it brings up a pretty big bill. So the formula keeps changing on where teams getting sent. I know this year, for the first time in a long time, they look to try to keep it more regional. For example, Gasparilla, we had two teams that were able to drive. Auburn staying basically at home, LSU going, just a little bit across the border. I think that's the formula you're going to start seeing because of the expense. There'll be a unique situation, here or there, but for the most part, they're going to try to keep it localized, and how they mix it up. Don't ever look at the prognosticators, because nobody really knows. It's down to basically those conference offices and what they think will be best for their conference.
Jack, from the standpoint of the regionalization of it, in fact, that actually makes some sense, don't you think? Because unless you're playing in a New Year's, 8 bowl game, you're not going to get a lot of travel. So if I only have to travel, say, an hour, 2 hours, even 4 hours, that's a lot better for me necessarily as a fan than it would be for someone who has to get on a plane and fly halfway across the country to see my team play in a bowl that may not be as as attractive as some of these New Year's Six bowls.
Yeah, absolutely. It needs to be that way. And Jim, you and I have talked about this for years.
Mm-hmm.
Again, old school days, you knew in November, you had an idea where you were going.
Right.
Now you're waiting until this year was December 5th. And some bowl games are 2 weeks out to try to travel to a lot of these destinations. It's not easy, especially in the current situation we have with the airlines. And you want to take as many people as possible from your alumni base and get them to go see your team.
Mm-hmm.
And, the regionalization is really so much more welcome because, even if it's a 10-hour drive or 12-hour drive, it's a lot better than, going from the state of Florida to Texas,
mm-hmm.
Or even going up to Tennessee, if you're University of Miami or, a team up in Boston College trying to travel south.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to take care of the fans when you can. You don't want to have empty stadiums, if you can avoid that.
Right. And the other thing too is, with regard to the regionalization of it, it does give you an opportunity to have some fan bases that, maybe they don't like Florida and UCF, right? They don't play each other on a yearly basis, but there is a bit of a fun backyard rivalry there, where UCF's the little brother and Florida's the big guy, and so getting those kind of games are attractive to fans and attractive to people who are in the local area because there is some meaning to it.
Absolutely, and I think from a television standpoint too, you would think they'd want to have a matchup of two rivals playing each other.
Mm-hmm.
It may not have it may not resonate in Seattle, Washington,
Right.
But for the rest of the country, they may be interested in seeing a game that makes sense, from a regional matchup. This year again, UCF has been a curious team to follow
Mm-hmm.
for a number of years now. They've been a dynamic offense, in the past, and
Mm-hmm.
you hear a lot about them, but you may not get a chance to see them on prime time like you'd hope.
Right.
So yeah, the attractive matchups, again, it's a combination. The conferences control it, so there's a little politics there. The television networks, which is mainly ESPN now, they control the matchups because it's important for them to have good ratings. And with ESPN owning, almost 50% of the bowls, it makes sense for them, to have a good matchup that's not going to lose them money as the sponsor organizer too.
Right, and you look at, this year it didn't come off, but the Sun Bowl had Miami, the University of Miami of Florida, going out there for, in essence, the second time in 3 or 4 years. And I'm thinking, look, I like El Paso. I've been there many times. It's a wonderful place. But going from Miami to El Paso to play a football game, when you know that the University of Miami is not going to travel people, doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, Miami is one of, I'd say, probably a half dozen programs in the country where you would take them because it may have some buzz in your local market based on their history.
Right.
So they know Miami doesn't travel, but if they can bring Miami in, which has got a name brand,
right,
someone in El Paso or surrounding areas may be able to go, and hopefully the opponent would bring in some people. But again, that's the independent bowls. There's only a handful out there. The Sun Bowl's, one of them, and the Independence Bowl. They are going to try to do their best to get the most attractive matchup to sell the tickets because they don't have an underwriter like ESPN.
Right.
So they need to do what they can to take care of their fans and their sponsors.
Mm-hmm. Chris?
Now, Jack, how difficult was it, especially with all these teams pulling out at the last second to try and shuffle around some of these bowls? I mean, we had to see, Washington State had to shuffle in. Rutgers came in as a 5-7 team after thinking they weren't going to play, and then they ended up playing Wake Forest and basically got run over, which I think everyone expected. But how difficult was it to try and slot new teams in after we saw teams pull out basically at the last second?
I wish I was closer to the situation to give you the conversations that took place. I could tell you we were holding our breath 24 hours into our game, knowing what was potentially out there. You just have to find a program that's got enough players nearby that they can quickly get together, that are still in shape, enough to, make it a trip. Now, I could tell you from an alumni standpoint, that's great for Rutgers. Now they have the ability to take their big time boosters and give them an entertainment weekend down in Jacksonville. So the school's going to try their best to, not only do that, it's a 4-hour commercial for Rutgers University too. I mean, we joke locally here. You look at college admissions, and we had a long conversation internally in our house on how hard it's been if you try to apply to a program that's been winning. I mean, it's I think a proven formula out there going back to when TCU and LaDainian Tomlinson. Not many people were familiar with TCU. All of a sudden, the run that they had, increased the type of applicants that they were getting, the quality of their applicants. San Diego State had that with Kevin Falk, and they were winning. So the ability for a college now, from the academic side, looking at the ability to have a 4-hour commercial is almost the same way how bowl games got created years ago, when you were trying to do Convention and Visitor Bureau commercials of 4 hours to get people to visit Orlando or visit Tampa, or in this case, recently Myrtle Beach in the Bahamas.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, Jack, and I've told people this, and I'm old enough to remember this, and that was that there, back in the day, both the Pac-8 at that time and the Big Ten, they only sent 2 teams to bowl games, and that was the winners of the championship games, and the champions of the division of the leagues would go and play in the Rose Bowl. And it didn't matter whether you were 9-1 or 8-2 or whatever. If you didn't win the Big Ten or you didn't win the Pac-8, you didn't go anywhere. Well,
there's also years that I'm sure remember that not all the bowl games were on TV either.
Sure.
It was just syndicated. It was a combination. Again, once these Convention and Visitor Bureaus realized the impact of having that 4-hour infomercial, in which usually that halftime and the bumper shots showcase that market to get people to come down. Right. And then the television networks looking at programming and saying, wow, I've now taken care of a 4-hour window also. Mm-hmm. It just was a combination of multiple factors that I think have allowed it to grow. And then schools said, hey, let me get a part of this. And then the coaches said, well, I'd love to have a couple extra weeks practicing, especially for the kids that are going to be coming back next year, that I can get them out there and see what they can do. So there's all these different factors that came into play, I think, to see the explosion of the amount of bowl games of, as you said, just really was the Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, it was just a handful of bowls back then. Yeah. Sugar Bowl. Yep. And now it's just, for better, for worse, I heard a great example the other day saying there may be a few players that opt out, but there's probably 80 to 90% minimum of those seniors knowing that's their last game they will ever play in a football uniform. Mm-hmm. And while you may not see that future first-round draft pick, you're going to see a bunch of guys out there put in an effort because this is their last chance. This is their last hurrah, and they know it. I still have, by the way, Mizzlou T-shirts and golf shirts left over from the days that they used to syndicate all the different bowl games. The Blue Bonnet Bowl. That was a mainstay for years. That December 31st. What are you going to watch on TV? It was the Blue Bonnet Bowl. And then the Tangerine Bowl was also part of that network. Right. I mean, there was just a handful of games out there. The Liberty Bowl. Right. There was a bowl in Tampa that used to be called the All-American Bowl, which was a college all-star game. And that game got played. One of my all-time favorite stories is we're doing that game. A local guy in the Tampa Bay area, you would know. There's no reason for you to know him, folks. No reason. His name is Dick Crippen. Dick worked the sidelines on that game. The halftime at that bowl was the late Ray Charles, and we're trying to tell Dick that he needs to point Ray toward a camera which is up, maybe, I don't know, a couple hundred feet from where he is.
And so Dick, of course, being not thinking, taps Ray on the shoulder and goes, "Ray, you got to look at that camera over there." So, to this day, I would still kid Dick about that situation. But, it was the old days of TV, and now everything is an ESPN or CBS or Fox or am I leaving anybody out? Notre Dame, I don't think I'm sorry, NBC, I don't think has any more bowl games. They used to, but I don't think they have any. They used to have the Gator Bowl. I think they let that go too. So there's that. Hey, Jack, I know you got to get out, and we're going to get you out, but you want to take a look with us at tonight's game?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, here we go. Chris, this is what Chris does for a living. Christopher?
And first, guys, just to let you know, if I was working, and this is only the second time in probably 6 CFPs that I'm not at the game,
yeah, I know.
They have the staff. Kickoff is still, 6 hours, 7 hours away? The staff shows up starting at 6 a.m. is the first crew that starts showing up. So I would have probably already been at work for a few hours now if I was up in Indianapolis, and it would be a lot colder than what it is here in Fort Lauderdale that I'm in right now.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Talk about what you do from 6 a.m. all the way up to kick.
We're kind of like the firemen. We're sitting there waiting for the bell to go off on a lot of occasions. There's a lot of moving pieces that go on from, as you know, that a lot of ESPN broadcasts start out very early in the day. There's also a couple other networks that are doing outside broadcasts.
Sure.
The local TV affiliates are there. They're all looking for different interviews, different places to shoot. Last minute setup for the digital media, which is now a huge, ordeal of putting it together. You have all these social media workers that were not around a couple years ago. Now you've got potentially 2 to 3 video staffers plus 2 to 3 photographers and graphic artists that you're working with, getting them set up, and they're doing shots pregame. So there's a lot of preparation. It's really just having everyone in place. So when the media starts showing up around 3 o'clock, that you're there to facilitate and give them their stories, because a lot of people are filing throughout the day.
Right. And you've got the local radio that's there as well.
Absolutely. There's a ton of activity that goes on.
So, all right. Go ahead, Christopher. Let's start talking. We'll get Jack involved here.
Well, like we said, both these teams that come in 13-1, obviously they both won one-sided games in the semifinals. Georgia favored by 3. Now, take note, they were favored by 6 in the SEC title game last month in Atlanta, and we saw Alabama hang 41 points on the number 1 scoring defense in the league in a 17-point win there. Alabama, they ran for 301 yards in that win over Cincinnati in the semifinals, which is a lot different than what we saw in that SEC title game when Bryce Young was 26 of 44 for 421 yards and 3 touchdowns. In the series, Georgia's lost 7 in a row against Alabama, including that 26-23 overtime loss in the national title game 3 or 4 years ago now. Georgia's 0-4 in their last 4 after an ATS win. Alabama's 4-0 against the spread in their last 4 at a neutral site. 5-1 in their last 6 as an underdog. 4-1 in their last 5 after picking up at least 450 yards of offense. 9-3 against the spread in their last 12 on field turf. And since 2009, Nick Saban has been an underdog 3 times. Alabama has won each of those games by double figures. You have to think, I know that there's a recency that these teams played just a month ago, and Alabama doesn't have John Mechie III, which is a big blow, but, with Jamison Williams over there on the outside, and with the way that Brian Robinson ran the ball against Cincinnati, I like Alabama with the points over Georgia to win another national title, as much as, it seems like same old, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, as Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey would tell you. Until you get knocked off the mountain, you're up there for a reason. I think Alabama's going to win this one, much to the chagrin of probably 95% of fans of college football that would love to see somebody else.
Well, I got to say that, not a fan of Georgia, but it would be nice eventually to see somebody else beat them. But, Jack, what do you think? Kirby and Saban, they got a history. They know each other.
The history is there. I think more importantly, it's what's going to happen with Georgia's defense to put points on the board to help support a solid offense. But I think all of us who followed Alabama throughout the season, including the huge game at Florida, the Auburn game, you see they have an offense that can score with under 2 minutes to go and come from behind. Kind of reminds you of like if you're playing New England. The game's not over until the gun goes off, and especially those who were in Atlanta to see Tua pull that off. You know Alabama has those dynamic players. The question is, does Georgia have those players on offense that can show up? Because the defense is going to need to help them. It's going to need to score points. Special teams are going to have to be the difference because I just don't see the same dynamic quarterback, no matter who they have out there in the Georgia helmet, whether it's JT or Stetson, that's going to have that 400-yard game.
I was surprised that they didn't go back to Daniels after the way things unfolded in the SEC title game, Jack. I mean, are you surprised that Stetson Bennett's still under center there?
There's always that behind-the-scenes story we don't know. Who controls that huddle? Who's the better leader in there? Who's not going to lose the game for you? Maybe one of those thoughts too. I think more importantly, it's going to be one of those games where Georgia has to win on the ground and then set up the play action for them. So I don't think it matters whether it's Stetson or JT. I mean, Stetson hasn't lost outside of the championship game. He kept winning. So do you take that formula away if it's continuing to work? I'm not sure what the coordinators see that keeps him that much ahead of JT, but I mean, you may see both quarterbacks play in this game.
One of the things too in this situation is that much like the situation with Belichick, Saban and Belichick are old buddies. You give Saban that much time to scheme against Georgia, and that would concern me. I would not want. I mean, I know Kirby's a good guy and he's got great assistants and wonderful coordinators, but it's just until you can prove me wrong from a standpoint of Alabama playing above the rim, I'll tell you what, Alabama's a tough team to beat.
Jim, the other thing, Jim and Chris, the other thing I look at is human nature. How many of us have had a job and we were hired for a new job?
Right.
Now, if this is your first time being a head coach, how much you want to win that national championship as a defensive coordinator for Georgia, it means a lot. But you've got to be thinking about a little bit. It's got to be towards how am I going to be recruiting for my new job at Oregon? So I don't know. I don't want to put too much emphasis on it, but I still know human nature is you're not 100%. It's hard to be 100% in when you know all that's ahead of you starting tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. when you're out there recruiting, looking at the transfer portal, looking to see who's on your team, staffing it up. You want to win a national championship this close. So that's got to have a small effect that you've got to take into account on this. But again, Georgia's defense and special teams have to set the tone to put Stetson or JT Daniels in a position where they don't have a long field every time. We know Alabama's vulnerable. They can be scored on, but can you do that enough and often where you can rest a little bit, and not have your defense on the field the entire game?
Hey, any chance that Nick Chubb has any eligibility left? Well, we can dream, right? Jack, I know that you got to get out of here, and we really appreciate it. We promised to get you out by 2 o'clock, and so we're going to do that. But really, thanks for coming by and talking. Give us some of a look behind the scenes of what it's like from a PR standpoint on game day.
I appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys, and whenever you need me back, there's a lot of fun stories, as you know, to tell. But looking forward to catching a national championship game tonight. It should be a fun one.
Jack, we're going to have you back, and the stories that you can tell, my friend, I'm quite sure. Just the ones that we've had on phone calls between us, we can have some fun with. So, as always, Jack, thanks so much. Enjoy the game. You and the family be safe.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you, buddy. Bye-bye. All right. Jack Keely joining us, and it's nice of Jack to drop by. I know that he's probably not missing, as he said, being in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be up at 6 in the morning for a game that doesn't start till 8 o'clock at night. It reminds me of the days of being in the military. You know,
Yeah,
I like being able to sleep in now when I want to.
Yeah. But the other thing too, Chris, is we're talking about the fact that you get there at 6 o'clock in the morning, but you got a rolling group of people that come through, and when the game's over, you're still 4 or 5 hours going all the way down to the wee hours of the morning, almost to almost 24 hours, because when it's all said and done, you're setting up for the morning shows. So, whether it's ESPN's morning show, whether it's Fox morning show, whether it's a local morning show. I did want to mention that one of Jack's, both of our friends, great broadcaster by the name of Eli Gold, is the voice of Alabama. And Eli, a lot of people know him from being the voice of NASCAR for many years. Eli is, we like to call him the king of Alabama, because if you're the voice of Alabama, you might as well be the king of Alabama. So he's been doing it for many years, and so he gets God knows how many rings he's got from his many years as the Crimson Tide voice. So anyway, thanks for Jack dropping by, everybody. Check him out. It's Jack Keely, Trifecta Media, and he's located down in Fort Lauderdale. As he said, it's kind of nice to be in 83 degrees versus 14 degrees. So,
Marv Albert would say a balmy 14.
A balmy 14. Before we move on, and we're going to move on to this time we're going to get it right. We're going to start moving on to college basketball in a second. Let's talk about our main sponsor. That's right, our buddies at Caesars Sportsbook. Now, Caesars Sportsbook, which of course is the official sportsbook of the National Football League, is also very good friends with us. And I'll tell you how good they are. They are going to give you a deal because you like Winners and Whiners and you're part of our family. In our show box below, you'll see that if you use the promo code Video Winners, that's Video Winners, what Caesars is going to do if you use them for your first time on their app or online, they will match your first bet dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. Okay. So, and as Chris likes to say, that's free money, and free money is always good. So check out Caesars Sportsbook. By all means, all the information is in the show box below. Remember that you have to use the promo code Video Winners to get that deal, and it's a great deal. So check it out. Remember that you have to be 21 years of age to participate. Also, it's Caesars Sportsbook is in certain areas of the country, so you have to check that to make sure that you are eligible to use it. And as we always say, both Caesars and those of us here at Winners and Whiners, please bet responsibly. All right. And speaking of responsibly, we now are moving over to college basketball. And where are we going first up this time around, Christopher?
Well, we're going to start in the Summit League, where the Kansas City Roos, one of your favorite team names, Jim.
That's right.
They're at home. They face the Nebraska Omaha Mavericks tonight. Kansas City favored by 9 or 9.5, depending on which book you go to. Nebraska Omaha 3-13 this year. Kansas City, they're a 500 team at 6-6, but they are 3-0 at home. Meanwhile, Nebraska Omaha is 0-7 on the road. I probably put it mildly when I said that the Mavericks are horrific on the defensive end of the floor. They're 352nd in scoring defense, 346th in defensive efficiency according to KenPom, 320th in effective field goal percentage as opposing teams shoot 54.3% from the floor. They don't force turnovers. They give up a lot of offensive rebounds. And teams like to shoot from the outside against them. They get a lot of opposing teams shoot 37% from beyond the arc, which is 330th in the nation. Meanwhile, Kansas City's 41st in scoring defense at 62.4 points a game, and they hold opposing teams to 27.5% from three. Nebraska Omaha is 1-4 in their last 5 on the road against teams with a winning home record. 1-4 in their last 5 on the road and overall. The Roos are 5-0 in their last 5 as a favorite against the spread. They're 6-0 in their last 6 at home against teams with a losing road record, and they're 10-1 at home in their last 11 or 10-1 overall, I should say, in their last 11 against teams with a winning percentage below 400. I know Nebraska Omaha upset Western Illinois a couple weeks ago, but that game was in Omaha. This one is not. Look for the Roos to take care of business over the Mavericks, dropping them to 3-14 on the year.
Go Roos.
Somebody's got to root for them.
That's right. I'm rooting for them. Go for it. All right. We're leaving the beautiful Kansas City, Omaha area and moving on to
the other exciting ball game of the night, and we've seen people talking about it in the chat. That's right. It's the University of Illinois Chicago -8 over everybody's favorite doormat of college basketball. That's right, IUPUI. Now, I know that people are concerned about the fact that the Jaguars are actually getting 8 points in this game, but let's take a closer look at what's going on. I mean, UIC, they're 4-8. They lost to Wright State on the road, 90-72 Thursday.
Which we told you they were.
Yep. IUPUI 1-11. They lost 72-58 also to Wright State on Saturday. Now, that's pretty much where the similarities stop, let's be honest. IUPUI still can't score points. They're 357th in the nation out of 358 teams by averaging 50.8 points a game. They're 357th in field goal percentage at 36.9%. You could probably do better falling out of a boat in the desert and finding water than you have watching IUPUI try to make a basket. They're 351st in three-point shooting at 27.1%. Meanwhile, UIC, they're 55th in two-point shooting at 53.9%. Despite the fact that they don't score a ton of points, that's mainly because they play at a very slow pace, which I don't understand. Luke Yaklik, the coach of the Flames, does have some offensive talent, but he doesn't seem to utilize them properly. IUPUI is 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 at home. They're 0-5 in their last 5 against teams with a losing record, so they can't even beat teams that are bad. They're 0-4 in their last 4 against teams with a road winning percentage below 400, and that's where UIC is. They're 2-3, so they're right at that 400 mark. IUPUI is 0-4 in their last 4 at home against teams with a losing road record, and they're 1-4 at home this season. That one win came in that offensive bonanza when they scored a season-high 61 points and a win over Spalding. Kudos if you know where Spalding is. Last I knew, it was a sneaker company. I'm going to take the Flames just because I have no faith in IUPUI scoring any points. I mean, we've seen it repeatedly. If you look, like I said, their high point total on the year is 61. By comparison, the Jaguars have scored less than 50 points. Let's see, 6 times in 12 games. That's not a recipe for success. I don't have to be Bob Trumpy to tell you those aren't good numbers, Don.
No, they're not. Look, a 1-11, and they only scored 58 points. Look, Wright State's not a bad basketball team, but they're not an overwhelming basketball team either.
And they're not a good. Wright State's not a good defensive team either. I mean, I'm not gonna BS anybody on that. Right. I mean, Wright State, they've won 6 in a row now, but they're still about below average on the defensive end of the floor, and you still only scored 58.
Well, we're gonna stay with the Jaguars where they are for as long as they keep playing the way they're playing, because why not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people, think that this might be a breakthrough game for them, but
we'll find out.
They've got to prove something to me before I can have any faith in them as being or taking them serious. It's kind of like Robert Morris,
Right. Yeah. It's the old
Robert Morris of the Midwest.
There you go. All right. Let's move on to the ice.
Right, and we got a couple games out there tonight, at least as of right now, because who knows what will happen in the next few hours. We've seen games get canceled in a hurry when nobody expects it. The Rangers are on the road. They're out at the Crypto.com arena to face the Kings. The Rangers 23-9-4 this year. The Kings 17-13-5. Surprisingly, the Kings are in playoff contention, which is something you don't really expect from them. It's supposed to be Alexander Georgiev, 7-4-2 with a 276 goals against and a 904 save percentage for the Rangers, as Igor Shesterkin is in the protocols. Jonathan Quick, 10-8-4 with a 240 goals against, a 921 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. Expected to get the call between the pipes for the Kings. One big plus for the Blue Shirts tonight, Artemi Panarin is expected to return from the protocols, giving them one of their top scoring options. The Rangers 18th in the league in goals per game at 2.89. The Kings are 24th at 2.71. The Rangers are third in goals against. They go 2.5 a night. The Kings are 8th at 2.63. The Rangers 4-1 in their last 5 overall. In those wins, they've given up 1 goal or less 3 times, including a 4-0 shutout of Tampa Bay. The Rangers 7-3 in their last 10 on the road. Meanwhile, the Kings 9-23 in their last 32 after giving up 2 goals or less in their last game. They come off a win over Anaheim. The Kings 6-18 in their last 24 on Monday, and they are 1-4 in their last 5 following a win. The Kings don't tend to really build up winning streaks. They tend to be one of those teams that kind of treads water, and that trend continues here. They won Saturday night. They'll lose tonight, and then they'll probably win their next game just because, why have any kind of consistency where you put together some sort of a streak in one way or the other?
Jonathan Quick is not a bad keeper, but he doesn't have a lot of help back there either.
No, I mean, you've got Kopitar and, a lot of guys that most other teams would probably have on their fourth line.
Right.
If
so
that.
He doesn't have a lot of help. I've seen him stand on his head and lose games before, but you just keep looking at him and going, if only he could go somewhere else, that guy could really be a force with another team. But goaltenders are hard to come by, and so Jonathan Quick and the Kings are together, at least for the time being. We don't see anything going from there. So anyway. All right, so LA and the Rangers. Let's move on. And
we'll go to the Ball Arena where the Colorado Avalanche are going to take on the Seattle Kraken. Now, we haven't talked about the Kraken in a while, probably because they haven't played a lot of games.
Right.
They're 10-19-4 this season. Colorado 21-8-2. It's going to be ex-Avalanche goaltender Philippe Grubauer, who struggled in Seattle. He's 7-13-4 with a 330 goals against and an 882 save percentage against Darcy Kemper. Boy, don't you wish the Arizona Coyotes still had him, because he's 16-5-0 with a 277 goals against and a 908 save percentage. Meanwhile, the Coyotes don't have 16 wins this season.
Right.
The Avalanche lead the league in goals per game, 4.32. They rallied to beat Toronto 5-4 in overtime the other night, in a highly entertaining game with a lot of up and down the ice action. Meanwhile, Seattle 30th in goals against. They give up 3.67 goals per game. Colorado 13-2-1 at home. They average 4.81 goals per game at the Ball Arena. The Kraken 4-8-2 on the road. They give up at least 3.5 goals a night there as the visiting team, while scoring only 2.64. The Kraken 3-13 in their last 16 against Western Conference opponents. They've lost their last 5 overall. They've lost their last 5 games against Central Division teams. Meanwhile, Colorado 5-0 in their last 5 on Monday, 6-0 in their last 6 against Pacific Division opponents. They're 11-2 in their last 13 against Western Conference teams. When these teams met, their only other meeting came back in Seattle on November 19th. Grubauer was in net in that one. The Avalanche rolled to a 7-3 victory in a game that was 7-0. Before Seattle got on the board with some late goals to try to make it look somewhat respectable.
Now, I was just about Philip Grubauer. There's an odd thing about Grubauer, and that is he is phenomenal on the pucks that are low. I mean, he's wonderful with saving with his legs. You seldom see him get beaten on the 5-hole. But, man, anything elevated, shoulder high or something like that, either he doesn't see it or it seems to just go over his shoulder. I just don't get it. I mean, he's not a glove guy. And you would think that would be the easy part, right? Because it's much easier to go up to catch a puck than it is to go down to block a puck.
Yeah, I think it's part of the curse of being a butterfly type goaltender, though, is these guys are so used to going down that they're not used to seeing thinking that guys are going to elevate it over them or get are the deflections that end up over your shoulder or underneath your stick or whatever else. And the injuries the Kraken have had, they lost Brandon Tanev, Jaden Schwartz is out too.
Sure.
I mean, those are big blows offensively for a team that's still trying to find their way. And when you couple that with mediocre goaltending, it's going to be a rough time for Seattle, especially dealing with a team in Colorado that A, leads the league in goals per game, and B, is almost healthy now. So now they can just steamroll you into the ground with McKinnon and Landeskog and Nazem Kadri when he's not in the penalty box for trying to mug some guy and kill him with a stick or anything.
I was just gonna say, to your point, since the Kraken are an expansion team, when Vegas started their role as an expansion team, the first person they got was Marc-Andre Fleury, and he was able to make up for a lot of mistakes that was made in front of him. And that's where the difference between Phil Grubauer and Marc-Andre Fleury is.
Right. George McPhee built the Golden Knights from the net out. Right. Ron Francis, I think, was trying to get some guys that could actually put the puck in the net and hope that they could put up enough goals that they could be competitive. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it hasn't really panned out that way because their goaltending has been brutal. Right. I mean, the only teams that are better than, one of them is Ottawa, and, Ottawa's had their struggles.
For sure.
And then there's Arizona, and, we talk about them all the time.
Right. All right, moving on to the association, right?
Yeah, we're going to go to the NBA, and we're going to start in Houston, where the 76ers are favored by 10.5 points over the Rockets. Houston's 11-31 on the year.
76ers.
Yeah. Yeah, Houston's 11-31, Philadelphia 22-16. Philadelphia, they've won 6 in a row. Meanwhile, if you take out that 7-game win streak that Houston had in late November, early December, they're 4-31 in their other 35 games. These teams met last Monday in Philadelphia, and the 76ers cruised to a easy 133-113 win. The Rockets dead last in scoring defense at 116.5 points per game. They're 28th in field goal percentage at 47%. The 76ers, they're 4-0 against the spread in their last 4 overall, 4-0 in their last 4 against the spread after a straight-up win. They're 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 against teams with a home winning percentage less than 400. Houston 1-12 against the spread in their last 13 as an underdog, 1-10 in their last 11 overall, 0-7 in their last 7 against teams with a winning straight-up record. And just to make it worse, this is the second game of a back-to-back for the Rockets. In those situations this season, Jim, Houston 0-7, scoring 104.5 points a game while giving up over 122 points per contest. You have to think Philadelphia, they're licking their lips. They haven't played since beating San Antonio by 19 on Friday night. So they're rested. They get to go face a team that's completely dysfunctional in the Rockets, who they pasted by 20 points last week. How could you not think that Philadelphia is going to roll all over Houston here?
I don't think you can. Take the 76ers and points and go for it. All right, moving on from Houston.
Yep,
we're going to go over to the Charlotte.
Yeah, the Bucks, they're a 2-point favorite over the Hornets. The Bucks 26-16, Charlotte 21-19. These teams met Saturday night in Charlotte, so they're playing one of those great 2-game sets in the same city. The Charlotte took that one 114-106, but it was important to note the Bucks had beaten Brooklyn Friday night in Brooklyn and then had to fly down to Charlotte after that. We're looking at a couple of high-scoring teams. Charlotte is second in the league in scoring offense at 115.5 points per game. Milwaukee's third at 112.1. But the Bucks have the edge on the defensive end of the floor. They're 17th in scoring defense at 108.2 points a game. Charlotte 29th, 116.3. You just saw the team that was worse than them. We just talked about Houston. Right. Charlotte 24th in field goal percentage defense at 46.6%. They're 24th in three-point defense. The Bucks 4-1 in their last 5 as a road favorite, 4-1 in their last 5 on the road overall, 5-2 in their last 7 after an ATS loss. Charlotte 6-15-1 in their last 22 against teams with a winning percentage above 600. Pat Connaughton is expected to be out of the health and safety protocols today for the Bucks, which will at least give them one of their wing players back. George Hill still expected to be out, as is Grayson Allen. J-Rue Holiday also out with a sore ankle. And, of course, Brooke Lopez has only played one game all season before back surgery. So that's not a major loss there. But, I mean, let's face it, the Bucks, whether or not Holiday's on the floor, which in this case he shouldn't be, you still have Antetokounmpo, the reigning MVP, and you've got or not the reigning MVP, but a former MVP, and you've got Chris Middleton leading the way. That's a pretty good twosome to have at any point. And I guess Charlotte, they've got some talent, but they're the Hornets. They haven't been in the playoffs in 5 years, and they're sputtering along in the Southeast Division.
Right. Okay, let's go to our final game on the hardwood tonight.
And that's Brooklyn and Portland. Both teams are playing the second game of back-to-back here. Brooklyn beat San Antonio in overtime by 2 yesterday afternoon, I should say, at the Barclays Center. Meanwhile, Portland beat Sacramento 103-88 Sunday night. Interestingly enough, the Nets, they're 14-3 on the road this season. Portland 13-11 at home. So you have to feel bad for Portland because earlier in the year we were talking about how great Portland was at home. When they started 10-1, they've gone 3-10 since then. But that means they're going to have a lot of road games as the season winds down. Portland won't have Damian Lillard. He's still out with abdominal tendinopathy. C.J. McCollum's still coming back from that collapsed lung. Larry Nance Jr. has a knee injury. Norman Powell put in the health and safety protocols yesterday. That's three of the top 3 scorers on that Portland team that you're not going to see on the floor here. The Nets could, as far as I know, have Kyrie Irving in action since it's a road game. LaMarcus Aldridge questionable with a foot injury. He didn't play yesterday. I'm wondering if that was just to give him another day to rest before he took the floor tonight. Brooklyn 4-1 in their last 5 on the road, 6-2 in their last 8 on the road against teams with a winning home record. Portland 1-5-1 in their last 7 after an ATS win, and 0-4-1 in their last 5 at home against teams with a winning road record. Let's face it, you just took away the top 3 scorers for Portland that combined for probably better than 60 points a game. Where's Portland going to get points when you're dealing with a Nets team that has, Durant, Harden, and, now if Irving plays Irving.
Yeah, and Irving, when he did play the other night, helped them, lead them to a win.
Yeah, he had 22 points in 32 minutes as they rallied to beat Indiana in that game.
Yep, so there's that. Before we go to 2 for the money and the rest of our fun stuff, let's go back and remind people that we are sponsored by our buddies at Caesars Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the National Football League. And they're our favorites because, they're willing to give you guys, the people who, support us, a deal. And here's the deal, all right? The deal is this. If you make your first bet with Caesars on their app or online, what Caesars will do is they're going to match every dollar that you bet on your first wager from $1 to $1,000. How about that? So it's free money, folks. You get a chance to double your cash. And that is an amazing deal. But you got to do what we have here, and that says right there below. And that is you have to use the promo code. The promo code is Video Winners. So if you use promo code Video Winners and you log into Caesars Sportsbook for the first time, and you make that first bet, then you're going to get matching dollars all the way up to $1,000. Okay, you can't lose on that deal, folks. That is a wonderful opportunity. So from that standpoint, all you have to do is check out all of the stuff in the show box below, and the information is there. Remember to use that code, Video Winners. You must be 21 years of age to play. And, of course, as we said before, just like Caesars and we at Winners and Whiners, we want you to bet responsibly. All right? Be sure to take care of checking out Caesars Sportsbook. And meanwhile, we're going to go back to Chris for 2 for the money.
Right.
And that, we got, there's the football game we talked about.
Yep, like we talked about earlier, Alabama +3 over Georgia. When you can't argue with the fact that the only time Saban's been an underdog in the last 12 plus years the 3 times he's won those games by double digits, including the SEC title game against Georgia a month ago. You have to think that the Crimson Tide will win another national championship, much to the chagrin, like I said, to about 95% of the college football fan base. But, until you get knocked off the mountain, somebody's got to do it. And if they don't, then we'll just keep seeing this repeat itself until Saban probably retires. And then who knows, it could continue after that. Then I like the Avalanche with the puck line. Like I said, they average 4.81 goals a game at home. They're 13-2-1 there. They're facing a Seattle team that is 30th in goals against. They already beat the Kraken 7-3 this season. Look for the Avalanche to prevail at home. I like the Rangers over the Kings. The Rangers have played well defensively, and they've got a little better offensive attack, especially with the return of Panarin, than the Kings do. And then Brooklyn, we just talked about it, -9 over Portland, the Trailblazers, without their top 3 scorers in Lillard, McCollum, and Norman Powell. That leaves you Yusuf Nurkic, Anthony Simons, and, well, I guess, if you're in attendance, you might get to play for Portland because God knows they could use somebody that could put the ball in the basket.
Let's go to 4 for the show.
Yeah, I like in one of those games where, people are like, wow, it's 2 teams from the Patriot League. I like Navy on the road, -10 over Lafayette. We told you to take Navy on Friday night over Bucknell, and they rolled to a 73-55 win in that game over the Bison. We talked about the Bucks over the Hornets. Antetokounmpo, even in that loss, even playing the second game of back-to-back against Charlotte the other night, had 43. Obviously, Charlotte has issues stopping anybody. They might have a little tougher time stopping the Bucks, considering that both teams had yesterday off, so it's an even rest advantage. And Milwaukee didn't have to go anywhere because they were already here to begin with. Philadelphia over Houston. We talked about how poor the Rockets are. I don't think we need to beat Houston into the ground any more than we already have. When you're 4-35 outside of a win streak, that's not a compelling argument for anything other than for you to be faded repeatedly. And finally, Cleveland, -5.5 over Sacramento. Both teams coming off a loss last night. Cleveland lost to Golden State in Klay Thompson's return to the floor, while Sacramento was beaten by the aforementioned Portland team by double digits. I like the Cavs to come up with the road win there to leave the state of California with a victory in their pocket.
All right, finally, our favorite. This is where you get to do a little bit of everything. Pick them all, or pick 2 of them, 4 of them, 6 of them. We've even had some 8 winners in this one. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah.
How to play this game.
Well, it's like you just said. You can pick 2, you can pick 4, you can mix them up with some of the other ones. If you want to put, say Oregon over Oregon State in there with the Avalanche game, you can do that, whatever works for you. Everybody has their opinions on how they want to mix and match things. Like we said at the beginning, Kansas City -9 over Nebraska Omaha. The Mavericks 0-7 on the road. Kansas City 3-0 at home, and they play much better defense than Nebraska Omaha does. And everybody's favorite game, I'm going with UIC -8 over IUPUI. I just don't have faith that the Jaguars are going to suddenly find a rhythm offensively, unless that rhythm is, shooting bricks. Oregon -4.5 over Oregon State. That game's at the Gill Coliseum in Corvallis. Oregon State hasn't played since beating Utah a week and a half ago. They were supposed to play Sacramento State last week. That game was postponed. In the Patriot League again, I like Lehigh, the Mountain Hawks. CJ McCollum's alma mater, -6.5 over Holy Cross. The Crusaders are winless on the road this season. Lehigh had won 3 straight before getting upended in their previous game against Army. The Kraken and Avalanche, I like to go over 6.5. Like we said, Colorado went over this number by themselves in the first meeting, that 7-3 win in Seattle back in November. Playing at home, they're even more dangerous. Grubauer's been in that building. It'll turn into a house of horrors for him again tonight. The Rangers and Kings, I look to stay under 5.5 just because the Rangers have played well of late. Like I said, 3 of their last 4 games, they've held their opponent to 1 goal or less. Washington minus 110 over Boston. That'll have Linus Ullmark in net for Boston against Zach Fucale for the Capitals. He's 1-0-1 with a .42 goals against this season. And Washington is at home. They play pretty well at the Capital One Arena. Alabama and Georgia, I look to stay under 52.5. I know they scored 65 points in the first meeting, but I don't think that it's going to take that many points to get the win in this one. Like you said earlier, Jim, you've given Saban time to game plan for Georgia's offense. And with Alabama minus Mechie, it might slow them down a little bit offensively. Mm-hmm. But could be a lot like we saw last in the CFP semifinals against Cincinnati, where they would run the ball just to grind the clock after they build a lead. Mm-hmm. Boston minus 6.5 over Indiana. Like Elliot likes to always talk about, fade the Pacers because they haven't played well. Utah, they won't have Rudy Gobert or Joe Ingles tonight, but they've got Mitchell and Bogdanovich and all those guys back in the mix. I like them to beat the Pistons, who are a team in complete disarray, even though they did get a win the other night. Let's quantify the fact that win came over Orlando. And finally, the Spurs +6 over the Knicks. I know the Spurs are playing a second game of back-to-back after losing to the Nets in overtime, but it's just a short trip across the Big Apple there. And the Knicks, they've played decent, but they haven't played overwhelmingly well. They just got pasted by Boston 99-75 Saturday night in a game where they looked rather listless after coming back to win that game Thursday night against Boston at home. Take the points in San Antonio. Hopefully Tom Thibodeau's team can figure something out.
Any of I know we've got a bunch of comments and questions out there. Anything that you see that you want to answer, or any?
I saw a lot of people talking about they think that this might be the day that IUPUI shows up. Well, they showed up against Spalding, but that I just don't have faith in the Jaguars. I mean, let's be honest. I know a lot of people underestimate Navy because they play in the Patriot League, and you're stuck with the specifications, the height requirements and stuff for the service academies. They could always make things difficult for them in basketball, but I like them tonight. And I think, that's going to be a plus. And yes, the Bills, they covered that line yesterday, 16 points. The Jets, for all the talk that people think Zach Wilson is a good quarterback, he looked absolutely clueless yesterday. Mm-hmm. He was sacked more times than he had pass completions. The Jets finished with 53 total yards of offense, a franchise record. And, I feel bad for some of the coaches that got candidate. Brian Flores was the big surprise for me. Miami firing him after winning 8 of their final 9 games. And I guess a big pushback out of that was, and that I've heard, is he wanted to draft Justin Herbert, but right. Owner Stephen Ross and GM, what's his name, Chris Greer, wanted to draft Tua, and there you go.
I will tell you this. I'll make this prediction. And that is Brian Flores will not be unemployed long. He will sit back, he'll watch the playoffs, and he will likely, very likely, he may not even leave the state. He may end up as the coach in Jacksonville.
I mean, he did a good job for a team that had limited talent and they had no offensive line. And,
Chris, sometimes being fired by a team is a good thing. And if you look at Miami, how many coaches have they had? I mean, they have had a ton of coaches.
Well, yeah, ever since Shula retired, I mean, if you go back and look just at how bad it's gone, I mean, they had, oh God, I'm trying to think of some of the guys that have come through there since then. I mean, you had Jimmy Johnson,
right?
Then you had Wanstead,
right?
Nick Saban was there,
yeah,
and Cam Cameron and Tony Sperano. Todd Bowles took over on an interim.
Right.
As an interim coach, then you had Joe Philbin. Then you had Dan Campbell was an interim when they fired Philbin. Then you had Adam Gase.
Right.
And now you have Flores. But, the sad thing is Flores, he put together back-to-back winning seasons. Miami hadn't had those since 2000 and 2001.
Right. This is purely a my quarterback versus your quarterback thing. And, let's just say Flores does not believe that Tua is a franchise quarterback. And I think there's reason to believe that he's right. So, as I said, sometimes being fired is a good thing. And I think in the case of Flores, it's a good thing. He will end up either as a coordinator or as a head coach in the National Football League, because there are people who do very much appreciate a coach who is talented. And unfortunately for Flores, he's honest. That's where he got himself in trouble, is he spoke his mind, and the GM and the owner didn't want to hear it.
I'm a little concerned that Stephen Ross is talking about how he has no coach in mind at this point. But the first thing he talks about is he loves Jim Harbaugh.
Okay, let me just cut through the BS for you. You do not fire a coach without at least 3 or 4 coaches you want. Okay, that's absolute balderdash from Stephen Ross. There's somebody he has in mind. If it's Jimmy Harbaugh and he wants to get him out of Michigan and bring him on down, then once again we're going to find out that Jimmy Harbaugh is going to say the same thing that Brian Flores says, and that is Tua still isn't a quarterback who is going to take you to the promised land. Okay, he just isn't the guy.
Yeah, his statement was, Jim Harbaugh, I love Jim Harbaugh. He had the opportunity once before to come to the Miami Dolphins, but he's at the University of Michigan. That's my school I graduated from, and I'm not going to be the person to take Jim Harbaugh from the University of Michigan.
No.
Why would you even bring it up if nobody asked?
He brought it up because he's trying to get Jim out of the University of Michigan. And if Jim goes back, I don't think it's going to be to go to the Miami Dolphins. But
and Jim Darrell asks, do you think that Shad Khan, Brian Flores, and Trevor Lawrence could get along if Flores took the job in Jacksonville?
I do. Shad Khan is not meddlesome owner. Okay, he's not. There's a difference there. He's an owner who is, he's concerned, but he's not one of those guys who picks up the phone and calls, the general manager or the coach and wants to know what's going on all the time. So I think that Khan genuinely just wants a win. And, as an owner, he's learning his way along. Man, I will tell you right now, I would hire Flores in Jacksonville, and he would with Trevor Lawrence. I think he could build a team. He's proven with Miami, that he took a lot of – look at what he did with the defense in Miami. That defense in Miami was good. The offense wasn't bad. He won with Tannehill, for God's sake. And then Tannehill, when he wanted to keep Tannehill, he couldn't because they didn't want him to. So Tannehill goes to Tennessee. So.
And that's true.
There you
go. To answer
go.
your other question, Daryl, yeah, I think Wofford and UNC Greensboro should go over the number. Wofford's a very good offensive team. They average better than 76 points a game. I get that UNC Greensboro plays at a very snail's pace. They try to win games defensively. They're only 317th in scoring offense, 64 points. But I think 125, 126 is a little bit low. That'll probably get to the 130 to 132 range. So I would think that one would probably go over.
Well, there you go. All right. Any final thoughts? We talked about the game tonight. I think we both believe that Alabama is going to knock Georgia off the pedestal there. And I still don't understand how you could lose as badly as Georgia did to Alabama and be the favorite in the game against them.
Yeah, I haven't figured that out either. I think a lot of people are surprised, and either the people in Vegas know something we don't, or they're just hoping that a lot of people are throwing money on Georgia.
Well, good on them if they are. So anyway, look, it's been a lot of fun, everybody. Have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll analyze what happened tonight in the championship game. Special thanks to Jack Keely, who joined us. Be sure to follow Jack at Trifecta Sports Marketing. He's a great guy. He will return and be back with us further down the line. We've got plenty of great stories to talk about about the NFL and about college sports as well. So we'll bring Jack back. We'll have some more folks who will join us as we get into playoff mode, which is coming up this Friday. Okay, and so until tomorrow at 1:30. Hope that everybody has a great day. Be sure to check out right here on the Winners and Whiners Sports Broadcasting Network our buddies Scott and Scott, who will be up at 3 o'clock with, of course, Back to the Window. Until tomorrow. For Chris King, I'm Jim Williams saying so long. We'll see you tomorrow.